Welcome to Exponents. In the Exponent chapter, there are a lot of rules you need to be very familiar with. So I'm going to start by just showing you some of the rules. First of all, you got to have the same base most of the time when you're working with exponents. So here's one of the rules. A to the m times a to the n is equal to a to the m plus n. So if they have the same base, when you multiply, you add their exponents. Okay? So that's one of the rules you're going to need to know. Another rule that you need to know is the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So when you have a to the m divided by a to the n, that's a to the m minus n. Okay? So when you're dividing, you actually subtract the exponents. When you raise an exponent to another exponent, you multiply. When you raise anything to the power of 0, it's 1. When you have two different terms inside of parentheses raised to an exponent, you can actually distribute that exponent to both of those terms. And the last one, which is a little funky, is anything raised to a negative exponent, that does not make the problem negative. It just takes the reciprocal of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out simple. I'm going to show you some simple equations, and then we're going to build and build until we get to some. They're going to have a whole bunch of terms towards the end. And I'm going to tell you to try a lot of these on your own throughout this video, so try them seriously. Pause the video and actually give them a try, and then watch to see how you were supposed to do it. The more you practice these, the better you're going to get, and we're going to be doing exponent rules and just making them harder and harder and harder for about 5 days in a row. So make sure you're practicing when you have the opportunity. So let's start. These are some examples of some very easy ones. I'll step you through them because they just cover the basic properties. So this is multiplying. Since we have x to the fourth and x to the third, what you do is add the exponents, so this becomes x to the seventh. So when you multiply, you add exponents. When you raise an exponent to another exponent, you multiply. So this becomes x to the sixth. And this one is an example of distributing. So we have an x inside and we have a y squared inside. So when we are raising and we're going to distribute it in, 1 times 3 is 3, so this is x to the third power, and 2 times 3 is 6, so this is y to the sixth. So it's distributing inside and a combination of raising a power to another power. Division is subtraction, so 8 minus 2 is 6, so this is x to the sixth. Now, for those, I'm going to give you a little background of how some of these might be easier to understand. So x to the fourth is just x times x times x times x. And then you're going to multiply it by another x, x, and x. When you're done, look at how many you have. X to the seventh. This is x squared times x squared times x squared, because cubing something is just multiplying it by itself 3 times. And if you go back to this, that would be like an x and x, an x and x, and an x and x. So as you can see, you have 6 x's when you're done. And then with division, why do we subtract? Well, think about it like tug of war. You have 8 x's on top and 2 on the bottom. When they play tug of war, these guys cancel each other out, and you're left with how many additional on top? You have x to the sixth on top. So that's just another way you can think about it is, while you're practicing these, if you're not very good, I'm totally fine with you writing out all the x's and y's to your heart's desire. But if I were to give you x to the 43rd over x to the 27th, you'd probably be a little upset if you had to draw that many x's. So just get used to the properties ASAP. So a negative exponent is just a reciprocal, so this just becomes 1 over x squared, and that's it. You leave it alone. So now we have a variety of variables here, and we're going to have x squared on top, and we have z to the fourth power on top, but this y, he's negative. He's unhappy. He wants to be on the bottom, so he becomes y cubed. So another way to look at a negative is think about it as top and bottom. If you have a negative exponent on the top, that just means he would be happier downstairs. So he just becomes x to the positive 1 downstairs. Vice versa, if you had 1 over x to the negative 2, that x to the negative 2 is just unhappy downstairs, and he'd rather go play upstairs, so that just becomes x squared on top, and the denominator goes away. Okay? There's all sorts of different ways of playing with these. You just need to get used to it. So, we'll do these right in a row, and then I'll let you try a couple on your own. So, we have an x squared. We have an x to the 14th. And when we multiply, this is all multiplication, you add your exponents. So 2 plus 14 is x to the 16th. And then we're going to look at our y's. We have y cubed and y to the negative 2. So 3 minus 2 is 1. It's still positive, so it stays upstairs, and you're done. The last one, we have z to the 6th and 6 more z's. So 6 and 6 make 12, so you z to the 12th. And that would be your answer for this. Of course, you'd probably just write yours all in one color. So let's do this. Next one, we've got x cubed on top, x to the 4th on the bottom. So we have, if you think about a tug of war, here's a little shortcut. You don't have to do 3 minus 4 and call it negative 1. Just find where the bigger one is. There's more x's on the bottom. So 4 minus 3 is 1, so x to the 1. So you have y to the 6th on top, and you have 2 more y's downstairs that want to be playing upstairs. So these guys are going to go upstairs to join the party, so they become y2 on top, which gives you 8 y's on top. And now you have 10 z's on top, 10 on the bottom, and 10 minus 10 is 0, so they just cancel out, and you're good to go with y to the 8th over x. This last one, we start getting into a little bit of tricky stuff. Step 1. We're raising both of these terms to the power of 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. Remember, when you raise an exponent to another exponent, you multiply. And y cubed to the 2nd power, so 3 times 2 is 6, over, and then we have x, y to the negative 2. So now we have to simplify again. We have 1x on the bottom, 4 on top. So 4 minus 1 is 3, so you have x cubed. And then you have 6 y's on top and 2 unhappy y's that want to be up top with the other 6 y's. So they go upstairs to a y squared. That gives you y to the 8th. And you're done. So, tricky? Yes. However, the more you practice, the better you will get. So I know what you're going to say. Why do you save us the difficult ones to practice? Well, that's just because if you can handle the difficult ones, you should be good to go. Now, that first row you see right there is not that bad. Don't worry about it. The next two, I will tell you right now, the answer to this one is not going to be 1 x to the 4th, y to the 9th, over 2. That is not the answer. Just saying. So, pause the video and give this page a try. So let's see how you do step by step. So, this right here is a little bit of subtraction, but what you could do if you want, you could rewrite it. Remember, negative means he wants to be on the other side, so this y cubed wants to be downstairs, and this y to the negative 6 wants to be upstairs. 6 minus 3 is 3, so you get x y cubed. That's a pretty easy example. This one right here, you're squaring everything, so remember, this is not an exponent. This is a 3. 3 squared is 9. It's not 6. Over x squared, y to the 4th. This one, you've got more x's downstairs, so 6 minus 3 is 3, so this is 1 over x cubed. You've got a 5 up top, so what? He's just a 5. And then you have x to the 4 up top, and you've got 2 more that want to go up top, so that becomes x to the 6th. And you can always think about it like subtraction. What is 4 minus a negative 2? It's 6. This one's a little tricky. This one, when you have a group, a whole set, or a big fraction raised to a negative 2, the best way to do this problem is to rewrite it as a reciprocal. So z cubed over x squared y raised to the positive 2. Remember, a negative exponent just means reciprocal. So if it's already a fraction, just rewrite it as a reciprocal to the positive exponent. And then that'll just simplify to z to the 6th over x to the 4th y squared. Because you just multiply everything, because when you raise an exponent to another exponent, you multiply. So the only thing about this one is I gave you the exponents. It is x to the 4th on top and a y to the 9th on top. However, this is 2/3. It's funny how some people will start subtracting even these, but these are numbers. Your rules for numbers have never, ever changed. So they still haven't. You have 4/6, which reduces to 2/3. Same with this. Negative 9/27 reduces to a negative 1/3. And now you just have to play with all of your exponents. You have 2 x's on top and 2 in the bottom that want to be on top. Or 2 minus a negative 2 is 4 x's on top. You've got 6 on top, 6 on bottom, they cancel. You've got 10 z's on top but 14 on the bottom, so 14 minus 10 is 4, but it stays on the bottom. And that's that for that row. Hopefully you did well. Let's move on. We're going to get a little bit more challenging here. I'll show you how to do a multiplying one first. So when you're working with these, you should multiply across the top and then multiply across the bottom and then simplify. So we've got a 1 times 6 is 6. We have an x to the 1st and an x cubed. Remember, when you multiply, you add exponents, so that becomes x to the 4th. And then you have y cubed and y to the 4th, which is y to the 7th. Now that's all over 2 times 1 is 2. X and an x to the negative 2 is x to the negative 1. There's no y's over here, but we still have our y to the 6th. So now you simplify. 6/2 is 3/1. You have 4 x's on top, 1 that wants to join the party up top, so that's x to the 5th. And you've got 7 y's on top, 6 on the bottom. They play tug of war. 7 minus 6 is 1, so you don't even need a denominator. It all goes away and simplifies to 3x to the 5th y. Next example, give it a try on your own. You've got a negative 2. I'll give you the first step. Flip it. So this is what you get. 1/3x y to the 6th, all raised to the positive 2 now, since it's downstairs and happy. So that equals 1/3 squared is 9. X to the 1st times 2 is x squared. Y to the 6th times 2 is y to the 12th, because when you raise an exponent to another exponent, you multiply. And the more and more you hear these phrases, the better you're going to do. So anything raised to 0 is 1, so that big ugly thing just simplifies to 1 because it's all being raised to 0. This one, first step, just like I mentioned, you flip it first and raise it to the power of a positive 2. Pause the video and try that one on your own. The 2xy cubed now is on top. The 3x squared y is now on the bottom. So you're squaring everything inside. So that's going to turn into a 4x squared y to the 6th over 9x to the 4th y squared. More x's on the bottom. So 4 minus 2 is 2. More y's on top. 6 minus 2 is 4. And you're done. Last one. Can you handle this? Well, can you? Give it a try. So, let's simplify this first guy. That's 1/2 x y squared z to the 5th times. Let's flip this second one. So that's going to be 8x cubed y to the 4th w to the 12th all over 2 x to the negative 3 y to the 5th. raised to a positive 2. Now you can square everything inside, or in this case, you might want to simplify what's inside first to make it more manageable. So this is still going to be 1x over 2y squared, z to the 5th, times. Now let's simplify the inside before we square it. So that's a 4 on the top. We have 3 x's on the bottom that want to be on top, so that's x to the 6th. We've got y4 and y5, so that's 1 extra y downstairs. And we have a w to the 12th on top still, and now we're squaring everything. So this is going to become 1 over 2y squared, z to the 5th, times 16 x to the 12th, y to the 24th, all over y squared, because we have to square everything. Everything gets multiplied by 2 except for the 4 actually gets squared. So now you just have to simplify like crazy again. So first look at your numbers. We have 16 over 2. That's just straight up 8. And now you have 2 y's on the bottom over here, 2 y's on the bottom over here, and look at me, that's supposed to be a w to the 24th. So we've got 4 y's on the bottom, so that's y to the 4th. And while you're practicing these, until you get really good, you might want to cross them off after you've worked with them. We have an x to the 12th on top, no other x's. We have a z to the 5th downstairs, no other z's. And then you just have a w to the 24th on top, no other w's, so you are finally done. Hopefully you got that one right. If you did, you're a beast already on day 1, and good for you. If not, a little bit of practice, and you'll have it no problem. This is Longo, and I'm out. See you, bye.